Colin.
Yeah.
What do you got?
I want to talk about drug legalization.
Yeah!
Smoke the W and kick the C.
Smoke the W. That's what all the
Cocaine?
kids say.
Yo, man, you smoked that W today.
First, though, I want to just give a quick shout out to
Drugs.
To drugs.
Shout out to drugs.
All the drugs and all the drug dealers and all the drug users. No, I want to. I want to give a shout out to my girlfriend Cheryl's sister Courtney.
What up, Courtney?
What up, Courtney?
Big drug user right here.
She watches the show for some reason, and her boyfriend does too, Philip, and it's his birthday. So
Aw.
I want to
Happy
give you
birthday,
a
Philip.
happy birthday, Phil, you son of a bitch. He's a Jets fan.
you buy him this shirt
They're
yet?
they're
I
back
thought
on
you
Long
liked the
Island.
Jets.
I do. I like the Jets.
So why you calling him a son of a
Because
bitch?
he's unrelated.
It's a term of endearment, just like scumbag.
Scumbag's not a term of endearment.
Not a term.
Some
You guys
bitch.
are all my scumbags. You're all my
Some
scumbags.
Confidentially,
I'm
so
your
one
scumbag.
of our fans came up to us at the Rooster Teeth thing, and he pulled me aside and he was like, "It's causing me mental anguish that people think of me as a scumbag."
Is he gonna sue us?
He's not going to sue us.
I'd like to see you try, you fucking douche.
But he did say that Greg Miller has a lot. He's better than that, is what he said. He was like, Greg's better than that. He can come up with something better than scumbags. And I was like, well, this is a guy that wears shirts that say Team Fat. So chances are he's not coming up with something better. But I think we can. None of that story, true story. None of that actually happened. No.
So anyway, yeah. So happy birthday, Phil.
Happy birthday, Phil.
Happy birthday, Big Phil.
And yeah, so drug legalization. Now this is inspired by in Washington State. This past week they started selling marijuana legally. This was voted last year. The same thing in Colorado. They've been selling it since January 1st there, legally to anyone over the age of 21.
Okay.
And I just kind of wanted to gauge your guys' thoughts on the legalization of marijuana and also the legalization of other drugs. If you think the use of drugs should be criminalized. And kind of where you stand, if you think it should be kind of by drug or natural versus synthetic or something like that.
Mm-hmm. See, it's hard for me because I was never weed was never my thing, right? I always liked alcohol, so I feel like saying, hey, alcohol should be legal comes second nature to me because that is sort of my vice of choice. I do like to go out and drink. I do like to hang out with the guys and have a good time like that. Drugs have never been my thing, so I don't really it's not that I don't have an opinion about it. I don't think that we should limit people's access to certain narcotics, but for some reason, weed to me isn't on the same level as some of the harder drugs. I don't know why. I still think that they can be equally as destructive. But I also I don't know. Everyone has that, especially living in California and San Francisco. It's like weed. Everyone has that sort of concept that it's already sort of legal because they don't really penalize you here. If you're caught with it, I've heard people say cops don't even care. They let you go. So that doesn't seem even real to me. I don't know. Is that weird to say?
No, not necessarily.
So
it's not even an illegal substance because people don't care about it.
why are drugs illegal?
Because they hurt you, or they have the possibility of hurting you, I guess, and also they're just contentious. They finally got over marijuana prohibition in those two states. Other states will follow suit. The die is cast with that now. That's over. Mm-hmm. And I think it's that they can't make money off of it. Now they're figuring out how to do that. And just the whole moral conundrum of should you let something that is potentially harmful? Because marijuana, I agree, mushrooms, things like that are one level, but you get into heroin and cocaine and all that kind of stuff, and that is next level drug. And I've never used any of these drugs, never want to or whatever, but my stance is still that fundamentally I'm not sure the government should be telling you what you can do.
Well, that's my thing, right? Is because inevitably, or at the heart of it is hypocritical, because you cannot say we can't sell cocaine or meth or heroin because it's super bad and destructive for you, but in the same breath let big tobacco push cigarettes out to the street and let kids 18 and most of the time younger, because it's very easy for kids to get cigarettes. How is that still legal? How are cigarettes still legal and weed's not, right?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. No. So it's almost one of those things, not that I'm advocating one or the other, but I could see the argument for just legalize everything, because at that point, that's who we are as a society. Why do we pick and choose cigarettes? Obviously, because they're the most powerful. The lobby, the tobacco lobby is one of the most powerful lobbies in the universe, and they just have more money than everyone, so they can keep this drug on the streets that's killing people and killing teens and causing all sorts of horrible cancers. But at the same time, people aren't allowed to smoke weed. That just sounds silly. It sounds dumb. It's one of those things where I honestly believe 50 years from now, we're going to tell our kids that, or our grandkids, and they're going to be like, no way. That's no way that's the way it used to be,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's an interesting issue. I think it is a moral conundrum in a sense because prohibition was a post-Civil War kind of movement that was largely driven by women, hand in hand with like the suffragette movement about their husbands being drunk and kind of drinking the dole, as the saying was, and spending all their money, wasting all their money. And it was their hearts were in the right place to ban alcohol, but it just backfired because you just can't do something like that and expect to get away with it. I don't think tobacco should be illegal, obviously. I think that you kind of have to draw the line. I think that the use of any drug should not be illegal. So if you do coke or heroin or crack or whatever, I don't think the act of doing it should be illegal. I do think that the government can say, we can't in good faith let you sell coke. You know what I mean? Like, the act of doing it shouldn't be illegal. Maybe even the act of buying it shouldn't be illegal, but the act of selling it should probably be illegal. And that is like...
But isn't that like a half measure? Like, how are you getting it otherwise? You're not making coke in your backyard.
Sure. But it's the same thing with, like, you're talking about marijuana in San Francisco and a lot of places where it's decriminalized. Like, you're not technically allowed to sell it. But they just don't arrest you for having it.
Well, at these places like Washington and Colorado, you go to a store and buy it?
Yep.
So, I mean, wouldn't that just be the same way with other stuff, too?
Yeah, but the difference is that marijuana has never killed anyone. Yeah, so like...
See, that's my thing. We've talked about this in a conversation with Colin before. Links in the description. And what gets me about it is... I'm with you that marijuana should be legal. Obviously, I've thought that forever. You know what I mean? Like, big deal. Marijuana. It's the same thing as anything, right? Like, what dulls your senses, maybe get in a car accident or whatever, but like, then booze should be, totally outlawed as well, right? So let's get marijuana out the door. Everybody's smoking marijuana. Great. Government should sell it, get us out of debt, stuff like that. But when you get down to cocaine and heroin and stuff, I've never for a second thought that any of that should be legal. Now, granted, I'm not a drug user, never have been, so I don't know. Like, I mean, like, I don't party with people who are doing that, so I'm not around to see it. But it seems like whenever they do it, bad decisions follow. You know what I mean? Like, do something stupid.
Well, also that it's that,
not all the time.
Those heavier drugs they have the stigma of being the heavy drugs for a reason, right? Like, people die sometimes the first time they do meth or coke because it messes with their brain chemistry and fries their brain, right? Or like, you hear those stories of people doing E, and the E was cut improperly and it messes people up forever. That happens. Very seldomly does that happen unless weed is laced with something, right? I don't think people are going to smoke weed for the first time. In fact, most of the time people smoke weed the first time, nothing happens. They're just like, I don't get this, right? Yeah, I think it would be, I just, obviously my brain immediately goes to like the worst case scenario, and like all of a sudden cocaine's free to sell, everyone starts using it, and a lot of people start dying, I think. And I think that that's not far off from what might actually start happening.
But I mean, so smoking, right, like cigarettes,
right?
This whole weed's never killed anybody. Has smoking killed people? Like, does that?
Yeah, but they can't
battle that.
Yeah, they can't. So as far as I understand, there was like a few landmark studies about marijuana's effects on the body, especially the lungs and stuff like that. And as far as I can tell, it's hard for the scientists to differentiate the effects of smoking tobacco with smoking marijuana. I think it was the UCLA study in 2004, which was like really one of the huge ones, where they basically said like it doesn't have any effect on you. Where they were basically like, it's hard for us to tell because some people lace their marijuana with tobacco. They smoke them at the same time. Some people smoke cigarettes and marijuana. Some people only smoke marijuana. Some people used to smoke cigarettes. Now they only smoke marijuana. It's like, so how do we tell? Like what the long-term ramifications of smoking a substance is if you're mixing them all up. I think it's fair to say that if you smoke marijuana, you have a chance, like the tar, you're gonna get the same tar-related stuff, like emphysema and stuff like that. Like, I think that's probably
inhaling.
Yeah, exactly.
Something hot smoke into your lungs.
And as far as I understand, marijuana tar is much heavier, and there's a lot more of it per, I guess, whatever weight that you want to use, but that you smoke much less of it, so that when you're smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, half pack of cigarettes a day, you smoke a joint or whatever a day, a bong or a bowl or whatever. That's still, and a lot of people, there's potheads that do it every day, I guess, and there's a lot of people that do it casually. So there's like all these like things that I think that a lot of the pro marijuana people are thinking wishful that there's no ramifications.
Right.
Of smoking but I also think that like the whole scare tactic thing of like marijuana is going to kill you, I think that's silly too, because someone made a really good point. I was having this debate with someone, and they're like, if marijuana was going to make you sterile and marijuana was going to fuck your brain up and marijuana is going to do all these things. What do you think your parents' generation would look like right now? First of all, you probably wouldn't exist. There was like a huge boom with the baby boomers, right? Like the baby boomers having kids. They were a lot of them were hippies, potheads, all those kind of things. You think they would the rampant non-age related dementia and all those kinds of things, which we don't see. So like there's all sorts of things that say that when you compare marijuana to something like alcohol, marijuana is actually not nearly as destructive. So my whole stance is this on a personal liberty kind. This is where my libertarianism kind of comes out. I think you should be able to do whatever you want to your own body. So that means if you really want to do meth, you're dumb. But okay,
God,
like do what you want, I guess.
Meth is the worst. Don't do it.
I'm just saying, like it's your body. You hurt someone when you're on it. You rob someone to get money for it. That's a different story, and that is another one of the reasons that people don't want to encourage drug use because, and rightfully so, I think, because you commit crimes to pay for it. But at the same time, it's the same way I feel about prostitution. Like prostitution should totally be legal. Like that's not even a question to me, because it's about doing what you want to do with your own body and kind of drawing your own lines and having your own self-respect or lack thereof or whatever you define your self-respect as. But at the same time, I think the government should, step in and say, all right, we're cool with marijuana, maybe we're cool with mushrooms, we're cool with these other natural things. We really can't be cool with you doing meth and coke. We can't allow that to happen. So even though you can do it, if we find you buying it or if it's on you, that's a different story. And I think that's kind of a reasonable stance to take. The same way I feel like even though I'm a libertarian and like a small government guy, I think things like the FDA are awesome. And like you could tie it, like the FDA is cheap as shit and they do like really important stuff. They keep you safe. And that's a good function of government because that's not your business. That's just saying like, hey, like this meat's tainted and you probably don't want to eat it.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. And so it's the same thing with me, or like these vegetables have pesticides on them. You might want to stay away from it. Like, that's totally fine. So if someone's like, hey, this Coke, you can't do it, because we just can't sanction that.
Yeah, but like at the same time, it's like how do you trust anything that allows cigarettes to be sold? Like they are bad. They don't make you feel good.
The lobby.
They're full of toxins and they are readily and plentifully available to any single person.
It wasn't the big thing about the making with prohibition of marijuana, the tobacco lobby to begin with.
Yeah, a lot of that had to do with them, and also, I mean, that's a big thing with. We have huge companies, especially in the South. I think there are like a lot of them in Charlotte or Richmond, like Philip Morris and all these companies. Yeah. We grow and used to grow, especially a shit ton of tobacco. Like, there's all these like landed interests that like makes it, and also smoking cigarettes is it's funny to put it this way because we know it's all messed up. I mean, you watch Mad Men even, and they like the evolution of cigarettes and like the stigma about them, like when they do the cancer ads and stuff like that, and the evolution if you just read about the cigarette lobby and like how they just had to slowly succumb to the science and accept that like cigarettes were killing people. But maybe much the same way with cocaine or heroin or meth, they're not necessarily going to kill you, and that could always be the argument. People that smoked a pack a day for 10 years and got lung cancer, people that smoke 50 or a pack a day for 50 years, they're fine. And it's like, and I think it's one of those arguments where it's like, well,
I think methamphetamines are a lot more destructive. Like,
sure,
they literally start burning everything. They burn what are they? Connections in your brain, the synapses in your brain. They just start burning those out. And literally, there are like, have you ever seen what that drug does to a human being?
Yes,
like
I have.
Like the study, the actual science behind it. I'm probably gonna slaughter it right now, but literally, it burns your ability. Like it burns the connections in your brain that allow you to feel happiness. Like it's crazy. It just starts eating away at the inside of your brain and your teeth, for that matter. And every time, it actually, I think, now that I'm remembering this a little better, it affects your brain's ability to release dopamine, which is the happiness drug, basically. And so and please tweet at me if I'm wrong about this and correct me, but...
they are.
Well, they did. Someone tweeted at me that Kevin Smith's never used the Kickstarter before, and I was like, oops, how did I not know that? And that's awesome. Thank you for that.
He did.
He did not. He talked about it and then decided not to do it. And so you end up having to do more and more meth to chase that high, so to speak, and it just eats away at you from the inside out. And I've seen it. I used to date a girl whose sister started doing it, and she started off as a very, very lovely person, and then by the end of it, they had to lock her out of the house because she was constantly coming in to try to steal stuff to go get that next fix. That is not a world I want to live in. So if that ever happens, that actually might be one thing that energizes me politically to go out there and be like, hard drugs are a no. It's just not going to be. That's no fly zone.
Yeah, I mean I don't disagree. Like I'm caught in between a rock and a hard place where it's like I just feel like personal liberty trumps a lot of the other things, or pretty much everything else. But
at the same time,
you're going to inherently infringe on other people's rights when you're doing these kinds of drugs. You're driving a car.
Yeah, because you're not allowed. You're never going to be allowed to build bombs, right? And just randomly put like ignite bombs because it could kill and hurt other people. So
Right.
that's always going to be something that's illegal, or should be illegal. I think the same goes for these hard drugs. People make really poor choices when they're doing hard drugs.
But
and
prisons are also full of non-violent drug offenders, you know, and that's like another issue I really have too, where we have like a crazy prison state in this country, predicated largely on the drug trade, predicated and fueled largely by the war on drugs. I do feel like the prohibition of drugs and the mystique around drugs makes them more interesting for people to do. I do think that if you, for instance, legalize cocaine, which I don't think is necessarily a good idea, but if you legalize it, yeah, there would be a huge spike in it, and then people wouldn't do it. Like it would go back down to like normal, especially if the state was selling it and they taxed the shit out of it and made it really expensive.
But I mean, literally,
Like, so,
if we were all at a party together and someone was like, "Hey, I have cocaine," and it's totally legal, would that not make you want like a little bit more likely to do it?
no, I would never do it. I don't. I
Like if
because
someone's like,
I
"This is
know
low
how
grade cocaine," because there's no
Low
stigma.
grade cocaine.
There's no
Cocaine light from Marlboro.
Well, that's what I'm saying, and they would do that, right? They would come in and they would say, no. There would be varying degrees on like what was stepped on and like how much it affected you, and you get just a little bump, and you're feeling a little drunk right now. It takes you right out of it, and like you're gonna tell me there's not people we know that would be like, yeah, I'll do it because it's totally legal and totally 10 years from now acceptable in society to be able to do that, right? Like
I mean,
in the
that's a good
20s,
point.
it was
Like, people
unacceptable
saying
to drink.
it's legal definitely makes me feel like, oh, this is an okay thing.
It's an okay thing to do. Like it's okay
I
for
would
us
do
to
it.
have one too many drinks at night, largely because we live in San Francisco and we were able to get home without having to drive. But it's still okay for us now, if you think about it, to have that second or third drink that puts you completely bonkers, and either you're going to wind up passed out someplace or you're going to that hot dog place in the marina, which is amazing and only open from 11 o'clock at night till 3 o'clock in the morning.
I think a similar thing here is if they lowered the drinking age to like
18.
or they just didn't have a drinking age, it's just legal.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wonder if there would be as many, underage drinking problems.
Well, they've proven that. I mean, a lot of people talk about that in Europe because the drinking age is like nothing. I mean, you can drink, and teenagers grow up experimenting with it and getting guidance from their parents on it because it's something that they're offered by their parents. Like, hey, don't do that. Just have one drink or whatever. And there have been a lot of studies that come out, although I have never read any of them. I've just had people tell me that there's been a lot of studies come out that say people in Europe and in European nations don't treat alcohol with the same level of taboo nature that we do because they don't get to 21 and just rage because they've been drinking since they were 14.
Exactly. I feel like a lot of kids in college are just going to go crazy because they can. And even like but when they can't is even worse. Like the high school kids are just like, we can't do this, so we're going to,
Yeah.
But if they could.
See, I lucked out. Like I've always said, I had a brother that was a bit older, so he helped guide me through a lot of those experimentations when I was younger with cigarettes and cigarettes. I can think of that, but with alcohol, especially, he was like, "This is how you do it, and have fun drinking, but like don't go anywhere and like never get in a car and never do any of these things." And of course, we've all at some point made a poor decision that thankfully, didn't backlash, but. I just don't. I mean, I don't think it would be the same way with cocaine, and also I think it's because it hits you way harder than one shot or one alcoholic beverage. Granted, I've never done it before, so I don't know, but I've seen people do it, and it turns them into like Coke monsters for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, I still feel like there's a level of personal responsibility too. Like, I've never done these hard drugs, and I never want to, not because they're illegal, because you can obviously do them, but because they're stupid.
And they're expensive and they're super addictive.
Right, exactly. And it's like, of course, we've all known people that have done these kinds of things. And it's just like, I always question it in the sense of, like, why are you doing this to yourself? But at the same time, I think about the people in prison, hundreds of thousands of people, minor drug offenders, nonviolent drug offenders, people that had some coke on them. Maybe they had the intent to sell. Maybe they didn't. Mm-hmm. It's like, let them go. Like, what are you doing? Why are these people in prison? Like that's the kind of stuff that bothers me. Like, we should be arresting and we're focusing our ire and our justice system at fucking violent people that infringe on other people's rights. So if you did coke or you have a little coke on you and you go to prison for a little while, that's fucked up. If you go to prison because you stole from your neighbor to buy your heroin, that's a different story, Right. And so that's why I understand the kind of moral conundrum, like I've been saying. Like, there is a real conundrum with drug legalization. It can't be as simple as the libertarian slant of saying, like, everything should be legal. But there is something to that, where it's saying, like, maybe it should just be decriminalized, Maybe the cultivation, the creation of meth or coke or these unnatural things, which they're all unnatural. They're all created, especially meth is like horribly unnatural, but coke is unnatural and, heroin's unnatural. These are derivatives of opium and things of this nature. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe that should be the crime, is to say, like, you can't sell, you can't grow it. But, like, if you did it or you have a little on you or something like that, like, were you really gonna like ruin your life? You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of thing I think about. Like, I just think about our crazy like prison system that would be replicated in terms of how there's like, what is it, like one person for every 100 people in the United States are in prison or something like that? That's insane. You know, like 1 out of 100 people in the United States are not criminals. You know,
but they make poor choices. I mean, that's
sure,
the
but they're poor, and then they're thrown in prison.
But time out. You just talked about the fact that we've all made poor choices here or there, right?
Sure. And I should have been like, yeah. And in reality, if I'd have gotten caught, I would have suffered the consequences, right? And that's my biggest problem is that I'm not as trusting in human beings as I think we all would like to be, in that I don't believe that I think we abuse substances. I think we do. I think we're fragile and weak, and I think we get addicted to things very, very quickly. And once you're addicted to something, by the way, it's not like you can just flip that off, right? You're addicted forever. Once your brain gets a hold of something, think about that. And it's not just one addiction. You can be addicted to multiple things. That's why people's lives get ruined. So I think there needs to be steep penalties, and I think, I just think that the FDA needs to step in, especially, and really, really, really take a hard look at these substances and how they're affecting. You don't really know. If cocaine were to become legal, I think it would be a good 10 years of really bad stuff.
Possibly, but I think the middle ground is not legalizing these drugs. I think marijuana should be legal. It absolutely will be.
It already is. If it's already legal in a few states, it's already legal.
But I just think that like the act of, on a personal level, decriminalizing all these other drugs will go a long way towards helping rehabilitate people. Like, you throw them in prison, they stay in prison, we pay for them to be in prison. Then they get out, they have no jobs, they have a stigma on them for the rest of their lives, they have a record, they can't get a job. They fall into the use of drugs and alcohol and these kinds of things. Cyclical. That's why, my girlfriend always says, my girlfriend works with, these kinds of kind of like populations, like criminal populations, whatever, and it really is a cycle. People that go to prison go back to prison.
Yeah.
If you go to prison, it's very rare or rarer to go to prison once and then never go back to prison again. And like, you should go to prison for assault or rape or murder or all these kinds of things, white collar crimes, all these kinds of things, like, absolutely. But I'm just asking the question, like, do we need hundreds of thousands of people in prison that sold coke? Like, that's all I'm asking. Like, maybe we would save money, maybe we'd be smarter and wiser and better for our population, better for our people, better for their kids, better for them, if we just not slap them on the wrist, but said, like, don't do it again. Like, give them probation.
Yeah, but then they do it again.
But then like warn them and be like, we want to help you. Like, we don't want you to do this. Like, it's just these the
problem is there's a ton of money. There's a ton of money to be made in that.
Sure, but you know why there's a ton of money to be made in drugs is because they're illegal.
Right.
So like
the hard sell, the hard sell, like the upside to marijuana is it does have some actual medicinal purposes, right?
Yes,
this is something that can actually help with things like glaucoma, anxiety, migraine headaches, things like that. These are scientifically or quote unquote scientifically proven things. So I feel like that was really the gateway into sort of being like, look, this isn't necessarily something as destructive as a drug, or it shouldn't be thought of as a quote unquote drug. When I think of drugs, I think more of the harder substances. There are no good uses for heroin or for coke or for methamphetamines other than...
No, think about the 19th century opium dens and all that kind of stuff. Like, some people are strung that... Like, wasn't Arthur Conan Doyle? Isn't that the guy? He was like wasn't he in like really into opium?
I don't know if he was into it or not, but his main character was into it. So I assume he had... I mean, my assumption is if you write that eloquently about chasing the dragon, you've done it once or twice probably.
So all right, so let's go around the table before we wrap this up. So Tim, where do you stand?
In the beginning, I would have just said, fuck it, legalize everything, because do what the hell you want to yourself. But you guys raised really good points. I think you should legalize a lot of the softer drugs. Like, I like defining them. Defining what is a hard drug and just coming up with rules, basically.
Yeah, is there any nation in the world where cocaine is legal?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Cocaine?
That's not
maybe, though.
Maybe. You're thinking where they get the cocoa pebbles from.
Oh, okay.
But I don't understand why alcohol and cigarettes are legal and weed's not.
We tried to make them illegal. Didn't work.
But that's the thing. Like, once something's legal, you can't go back on that.
Yeah.
Like, I think that from the beginning it should have all been illegal, or there should be a clear line of things under this or...
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, and this is gonna be a stretch, so walk with me on this one, but it's very much the same as the internet right now, which is there's not a lot of laws that govern the internet because the technology, and in this instance, it would be like that, people have been smoking and drinking for a lot longer than anyone even cared to have laws about such things, right? So when you hit the United States, you hit other, developing countries, my guess, and Colin, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the laws really couldn't keep up with the power that these substances had over people and the money that was to be made. So thankfully, when I think most of those laws were probably in place by the time some of these pharmaceutical grade drugs started happening, like cocaine and hitting the streets. Which I think cocaine didn't really show up until the late 70s, right? Oh no, I guess they'd used it. They had used it in wars for a long time.
Yeah, it's like
right?
19th century.
So like they used to use
not
it
as a post-war as a drug, and really, yeah.
But they used to use it like they used that caffeine pills to keep people awake and like keep people marching and going forward. Yeah,
exactly.
Which is crazy to think, right? Could you imagine if you were in the military and you were like, I'm really tired, but I have to go chart and like take that hill, and someone's like, take the ring out, go for it.
Take
the cocaine
ring? Oh.
I don't know why my brain went there. I just saw a 70s movie where someone had a cool coke ring.
I'm happy that you said the streets. Like
The
it took
streets.
us, I don't know how long to get to someone saying the streets.
When did I say the streets?
You said it a bit ago. It made
that's
me
true.
happy though.
I was thinking the coke nail.
Yeah, they always have the coke nail, but then have you never seen a coke ring?
No.
Where you tip up a little thing and there's this little bump in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had some friends that thought that was cool to have those in high school, and I'm like, you don't do cocaine, but they were theater kids. Theater. I come down on Wi-Fi. Why even bother not saying legalized marijuana? Because it's gonna happen. It's already happening, right? And if it gets to 3 or 4 more states, big tobacco is gonna step in eventually and start marketing marijuana. If they haven't already, if they haven't started marketing it already.
Oh, I'm sure they're working on it.
They're definitely working on it. You're going to be able to walk into a Shell station or a Chevron station and for $6 to $10 buy a pack of weed. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen.
Way more than that, but yeah.
You think it's going to be way more?
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
A pack of marijuana cigarettes in the same style as the pack of cigarettes you have now that would probably cost like $80.
You think so?
Yeah, especially with taxes.
Well, or they'll sell something that's a little packet of it or whatever you can smoke or sell it with. They'll probably package it with zigzags, like a 2-for-1 deal. You'll be able to do that soon. Probably, definitely in our lifetimes. Probably in the next 10 years.
Yes, we vote in California this fall.
Do we really?
Yeah.
I feel like
it already failed once though here.
It'll pass now that
I don't know.
Passed in
a bad
Colorado.
idea for them to put it in midterm elections. That's exactly what happened. Like we voted 2010, and it failed because those were always counterculture years, which are Republican years right now because the Democrats are in power. So you're putting it in conservative years. They should have waited and put it in 2012, and they should wait again and put it in 2016. I bet you it fails again.
Greg,
I say legalize marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
And then right now, I'm fine with everything else being illegal, but Colin raises good points about decriminalization. I would need to look more into that. But I'm not prepared to throw that switch yet.
Yeah, my whole thing is you got to just pay attention to the cause and effect about legalizing and making things illegal. Why does organized crime exist in the United States? Because of prohibition.
Yeah.
So that is the only...
I thought you were going to say the Italians.
No, I'm Italian, so like I said, you're Italian, so I don't
hater.
really care. Prohibition or organized crime is a direct product of prohibition. 1-to-1. No one would ever deny that. And when you make things hard to get, criminal enterprises will fill the void. There's no such thing as there being no market for anything. There's a market for everything. Whether or not it's legal or illegal, it doesn't matter because there is a market, a thriving drug market in the United States. There always has been, and the harder you clamp it down, the more thriving it becomes, and the more money those people make. So the balance that they have to make in Washington and Colorado right now with marijuana, for instance, is not making it too expensive. Because they make it too expensive, the black market won't go away. And in fact, the black market will become cheaper and undercut the government. So they actually can't tax it too much. They have to actually make it kind of appropriately priced. Right. This is a huge challenge.
But then, don't you think they're going to reach out to those people and whoever's got some sort of dealer or some sort of what do you call? I guess grove. What? Like a place people that are growing it, right? A pot
grove. Yeah, whatever.
A gully.
Don't you think they're just going to reach out to those people and offer them jobs? I mean, wouldn't that be the best thing to do?
Maybe. I mean, people are signing up in these states to become official growers and stuff.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be an undermarket. They don't want to pay taxes. So there's always going to be people that be like, I don't care. In fact, it makes it easier for them to say I don't care because it's no longer technically illegal.
Yeah, but I mean
they're dodging their taxes, which is the illegal part.
If Philip Morris gets into the game, it's endgame. You can't compete with that company.
Sure,
you can't. They're a very. I mean,
but we'll
that's
see
the
if they
same
can
reason why there are no black market cigarette dealers.
Yeah, we'll see. But there is a black market cigarette market for sure. You know, and
yeah, I mean those are stolen though. I mean those are
they're
cigarettes that
unstamped
they
and
steal off of trucks before they go through customs or something.
Like
and
Goodfellas.
well, they're
exactly like Goodfellas.
Yeah, they're unstamped and they haven't paid taxes on them, and they
Sure.
sell them at bodegas and they get them off of Indian reservations where they
Right.
don't pay taxes and stuff. I mean, so all I'm saying is like we have to it's such a complicated problem. So my stance would be yes, legalize marijuana, probably legalize all of the quote unquote soft drugs, as Tim put it, which is a good way of putting it, and then have really commission a study by the FDA to say like what does it look like to legalize these other drugs? What does it look like to decriminalize them? And what does our prison system look like if we handle drug-related crimes in a more rational way that are not violent? Violent crimes, whether or not they're related with drugs, should be dealt with very harshly. And what does that look like for our society if we like open it up and make it a little more free? Now, I think that where that ends up is saying like, decriminalize the use of all drugs, keep the cultivation and sale of hard drugs illegal, so it's not illegal on a personal level. You know, it's really illegal to sell. It's not illegal to buy, and make even you can even make those crimes harsh if you want, but I still feel like the war on drugs has been a major failure, and it's propagated and instigated and fueled the fires of drug use in this country, and certainly drug profits, which are cyclical. If there's a lot of profit, people will do illegal things no matter how dangerous they are to get that money. So there's like all of these different things you have to keep in mind. It's a very complicated issue, but I think that we have to kind of start being honest with ourselves at least about some of these substances, and be a little more consistent about them. And remember that prohibition of any kind on popular substances usually backfires. So in unexpected ways. Like I said, like prohibition was good, like the people's hearts were in the right place, but they spawned massive criminal enterprises in a few years.
Yeah.
Before you knew it, people were being murdered all over the place. It was
yeah.
No one expected that. So you just have to be honest that like sometimes, so the law or the unintended consequences now, we have hundreds of thousands of people in prison that don't belong there. Yeah. And that's really sad for the families. It's sad for us that are paying for them to be there. Prison's fucking expensive, man. So just food for thought for all of our loyal listeners out there.
Who'll be voting in their upcoming elections.
I hope so.